Hi everybody. My name is Paige Corley, and I'm a health educator for Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services. And today I'm going to be presenting a workshop about brain health and how to boost your brain function. I know a lot of the older adults that I work with and at Salt Lake County Senior Centers have questions about this. We're all very concerned, myself included, about keeping our brains healthy as we age, especially. And so I'm very excited to do this part 1 of 7 series. This one is the overview. I'm just going to kind of give you the overview of the different steps that you can take, and then I'll delve into each step a little bit more in detail in subsequent presentations. But for now, I want to let you know a little bit about myself in that what is my scope of practice. And I do have a master's in kinesiology, and I also have a master's in gerontology. So I am able to speak a lot about exercise and aging, but I am not a medical doctor. So if any of what I present in this presentation today conflicts with what your healthcare provider has told you, please know that they are the authority. They know the specifics about you, and you would need to speak with them directly about the information that I give in this presentation. With that, the information in this presentation is based on research, and it is credible. So I do hope that you find it helpful and interesting. So, all right. So next, um, what what we're going to talk about is what are normal brain changes, and then we're going to talk about 6 steps that we can take to help keep our cognitive function as high as we can as we age. And a lot of people are confused as to what is normal changes, because there's going to be changes as we age, absolutely. But what's normal and what's abnormal? When do we need to be worried, and when is it something that we can be like, all right, I don't need to worry about this or freak out about it? So let's talk about what is cognition. And cognition is, it's hard to define. So the American Psychological Association defines it as all forms of knowing and awareness, such as perceiving, conceiving, remembering, reasoning, judging, imaging, and problem solving. So when we talk about cognition, we're kind of talking about all of that, right? Thinking, balancing your checkbook, being able to have a conversation with somebody in the present, being able to talk with somebody about maybe something that happened in the past, being in a situation where you have to make decisions, and what are those decisions based on, societal rules, on your experiences, that kind of thing. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about, or that's what I mean when we're talking about cognition. And it seems like I know there's a lot of fear around Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's dementia, around dementia, I should say. And let me back up for just a second and remind you that dementia is the overriding heading. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia, and it's the most common type of dementia. But there are quite a few types of dementia out there. There's frontotemporal dementia. There's Lewy body dementia. There's a dementia that accompanies Parkinson's disease. So there are quite a few types of dementia, Alzheimer's being the most prevalent and the one that we hear about the most. And for some, I think we kind of believe that Alzheimer's and cognitive decline is just inevitable. That's part of aging, and um, we can't really do much about it. And that is absolutely false. There are things that we can do about it. Even if we have a genetic predisposition to getting dementia, especially Alzheimer's, there are things that we can do to mitigate that progression, and even stop that progression. So we are going to have cognitive changes. That's inevitable. That's what's going to happen as we age. But the severity of it, or what it looks like, or how it affects our activities, daily living, that's going to be very individual, very person to person. So I'm going to talk about the kind of some of the progressions. And so we'll all experience some cognitive changes, and it's very normal to experience some cognitive changes. There's nothing abnormal or anything to worry about in that way. And these changes will vary person to person. And there's a heading that we call preclinical, if I could say it, preclinical. And these are where you know that something's changed, right? You know that, wow, I can't remember things the way that I used to. Maybe I used to be really good at remembering phone numbers, and now I just can't remember phone numbers. I was always good at remembering names, and now I just can't remember names really well. But these are things that other people don't really notice. You notice it, but other people don't really notice it. Even your doctor might not notice it. And there might be a little bit of an effect on your life, like maybe you have to use sticky notes a little bit more, or maybe you have to ask people, hey, you know what is your name? I've forgotten your name. But it's very, very manageable, and they don't really start to affect your activities of daily living. Now, mild cognitive impairment, which is the next step, as you can see on this graph, that's mild cognitive impairment is something that your friends and family and people who are close to you are going to start to notice that there's a change. So maybe you're forgetting things that are on a broader basis, like not just somebody's name, but maybe I'm trying to think of how to get somewhere that you've gone to a lot. Something that should be able to be recalled and you're not able to do it. And again, it's your friends and your family are noticing this, but you're still able to function. It's really not affecting your activities of daily living. And when I say activities of daily living, I mean dressing and bathing, but I also mean things like grocery shopping and managing your finances. So different levels of activities of daily living. And mild cognitive impairment really isn't starting to affect those activities of daily living, but it's pretty close, right? Again, the people close to you are starting to notice. And mild cognitive impairment is one of those things that can be reversed. It's not necessarily a sign of dementia. Yes, mild cognitive impairment in some cases does develop into some sort of dementia, but not always. Mild cognitive impairment can be caused by stress, by medications, by trauma. So it's not always a precursor to dementias, but oftentimes it is the precursor. And again, dementia, as I mentioned before, is that umbrella term. And this means when your cognitive decline has gotten to the point where you are unable to do your activities of daily living. Maybe you go to the grocery store, but you can't remember how to get home. You can't remember, it's not like you can't remember how to get into your bank account, right? Because nowadays on the smartphones, maybe we just don't understand the process well enough, but maybe we've forgotten, how much money should be in there, or what our expenses are, in our life. So it starts to affect your ability to function. And often when you have dementia, even a stage 1 dementia, you're going to need a caregiver. You're going to need somebody to be around to help you. And you can see there's varieties. There's mild dementias, moderate, severe, and severe. They progress. And, research is working on ways to try to mitigate this progression. Maybe someone has mild dementia, and maybe there's something we can do to slow the progression of dementia. So lots of things going on out there. So again, normal aging, there is a decline in our cognitive ability, but it's very manageable and it doesn't affect our day-to-day activities in a way that disrupts what we're doing. All right. So when you forget somebody's phone number, you don't need to go be like, oh my gosh, I have dementia. It's different than that. Okay, so we're going to talk about cognitive reserve. And there's lots of analogies that I can use here. The one that I am going to use is gas in your car tank. I mean, gas in your car, in your tank, right? So when you have a full tank of gas and something happens, you get lost and you get off on a road and it takes you 30 miles out of the way, you have enough gas in your tank so that you can get back on the road that you need to be on and get to that gas station. And that's the same kind of thing that we're thinking about with cognitive reserve. And this is especially true as we age. The more cognitive reserve that we have, the higher brain function. And I don't mean intelligence necessarily. You don't have to have gone to college to have high cognitive reserve. When you have a healthy brain and high cognitive reserve, you are more resistant to damage and decline. So when things do happen, like aging, unfortunately, you're starting at that higher point. Another analogy is muscle on our body, right? If you're in your 20s and 30s and your 40s and you have good muscle on your body, when you hit 50 and 60 and 70, and let's say when you're 65 you sprain your ankle and you can't walk for 4 weeks, you have a higher reserve of muscle. So during those 4 weeks, you're going to lose less muscle than you would if you didn't have any muscle on you in your 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, right? You don't have a lot of extra. And that's what we're thinking about with our brain. So you can see on the graph, a person with that low cognitive reserve, when things happen, again, aging can be one of them, and we start that natural decline, they're going to hit dementia quicker than that person with that higher cognitive reserve. And I think that graph shows it pretty well. It's just it's going to take longer for you to hit that point of dementia or mild cognitive impairment or whatever it might be if you are going to um, hit it. So as we age, things happen, right? We get sick, we get injured, and those are inevitable. I mean, we can minimize them, but most likely they're going to happen. And that's why we really want to all the time be really thoughtful about building that cognitive reserve. So when we do get sick and we're not able to move and eat the way we want to or learn or whatever it might be, that we have more reserve, we have more gas in our fuel tank, we have more muscle in our body to sustain us during that period of being sedentary. So that's what we're looking to do. And that's what we're going to go over next are 6 ways that you can help keep your cognitive reserve as high as possible, keep your brain health as high as possible. And so, yeah, we're going to go over the 6. This only says 5, but it's 6. All right. So the first one is, of course, my favorite. If anybody out there knows me, you know that I'm all about exercise. I think exercise is one of the magic bullets of life that we don't take advantage of it. I read recently, and I can't remember where, if exercise were able to be in pill form, everybody would take it, right? It has an effect on almost everything that ails us. So exercise actually reshapes your body and your brain. We know that it reshapes our body, right? We build muscle, we lose body fat, we gain cardiovascular endurance, we gain muscular endurance. But exercise also reshapes your actual brain. And a lot of these little bullet points here are things that are really outside of my scope of practice. But basically, what they're saying is when we exercise, we help the synapses in our brain to continue to speak with each other. Because remember, one of the things about dementia is those neurons, those little nerves in our brain, they stop talking to each other. And we want to keep that communication open, if you will. And by exercising, we're doing all sorts of things to encourage that communication to stay there, like blood flow to our brains. Blood is so important to our bodies. If you're not moving your body and getting that blood circulating, you're not getting that blood flow that you really, really need. We found that we can build neurons in our brain even as we age. So this is going to help that. It's going to help with our hippocampus, which is right behind our forehead, and that's where a lot of our memories are stored. It's going to reduce inflammation, and inflammation in the body is not good. Sugar causes inflammation. And yes, exercise causes inflammation and stress, but it's the good kind, right? There's always a good kind of things. And so that's one of the things also that exercise does is it reduces that inflammation and helps the brain just be healthier. So in another presentation, I'm going to go over the specifics of exercise and what kind. So don't worry about that. But for now, just as a quick little snapshot, you can see engaging in physical activity 1 to 4 times a week was associated with a 33% reduction in the risk of memory decline compared to non-active individuals. So I'm not saying you have to exercise every day and be beet red and be sweating profusely, right? I'm not saying any of that, but we do need to move our bodies. Even 1 time a week, it makes a big difference. So we're going to talk about more specifically what types of exercise. And the good news is there are types of exercises that might be more functional, but any type of movement is good for our brain. That's the good news. All right. Any type of movement is good for our brain. So exercise. All right. The second thing is nutrition. And of course, I talk about nutrition a lot as well. And the main thing about nutrition is, I think one of the ways that I say it that I think makes sense to people is get rid of processed foods. Processed foods are anything that come in a box or a can, even foods that are pre-made. And I know that that's hard for some, right? Maybe if you get Meals on Wheels, some might say that's processed food because you didn't make it. But it isn't, right? Our Meals on Wheels program actually uses whole foods as much as possible and uses lean proteins. I'm talking more about when you have the ability to go to the grocery store and everything you buy is from the middle of the grocery store, you know, those aisles, and it's in a box or it's in a can, as opposed to getting whole foods, which are in the vegetable area, as you can see in the picture, or even frozen foods are going to be better. So whole foods. Another way to say it is foods that don't come with a ingredient label. So if you buy an apple, it doesn't have an ingredients label on it because it's an apple. An apple is an apple. Whereas if you buy a packaged apple crisp, it's going to have what ingredients are in there, right? So whole foods for the most part. You can see that the list here, there's a variety of diets, and we're going to go into this when I go into nutrition on the third installment of this. But just so you know, like the Mediterranean diet, fish, lean proteins, plant-based diets. And plant-based is a big word right now. All that means is vegetables and fruits. Eat your vegetables and fruits. Notice I say vegetables and fruits rather than fruits and vegetables. I love fruit, but vegetables are super important too. So eat your kale and eat your not iceberg lettuce, your romaine lettuce. Eat your broccoli and have your apples and your pears and your kiwi fruit, right? Variety. Um, Basically eat those fruits and vegetables, have your lean protein. If you're a vegetarian, finding that protein from something else like beans or legumes, or supplements if you need. But yes, whole foods, right? We want to stay away from high sugar and highly processed foods. And a lot of times, again, that is chips, cookies, junk food, for lack of a better word, right? And we'll go over this a lot more in another presentation, of course. The third one is sleep, and this is big biz now, right? The sleep has really come on to the focus. I think because so many people struggle with sleep, and lack of sleep has such a hard effect on our bodies. Remember, when we sleep, our brains have a chance to heal. Um, and it's super important that we give our brains a chance to heal, because it's when we sleep, kind of like when we sleep, our kidneys, you know, can help flush all the toxins out of our body using fluid in our body. That's why when we wake up in the morning, we have to go pee. At night, our brains do the same thing. They get rid of all that stuff that happened during the day and flush it out so we can start off new. It's kind of like restarting your computer. You know, when your computer is messing up, if you ask an IT person, the first thing that they're going to say is do a hard reset. That means turn it completely off, let it sit there for 30 seconds, and then turn it on. Get rid of all of that gunk. And they're looking for 6 to 8 hours. Some people need 6, some people need 8. I thought it was really interesting though. Too much sleep can also have a negative effect. So if you're getting 5 hours of sleep, that can have a negative effect. And if you're getting 9 or 10, that can also have a negative effect. So we really want to shoot for those 6 to 8 hours um, of sleep. And you can see it says here, individuals who sleep between 6 to 8 hours had significantly greater gray matter volume in 46 of 139 different brain regions. We want a plump brain. I was listening to a podcast with a woman that called it, she say, a plump, fluffy brain. You know, we want one that's pink and has good blood flow and has oxygen. We want to imagine it as this vibrant organ in our head, rather than this gray thing. So sleep is a huge thing, and we're going to go way into sleep hygiene in the fourth installment of this presentation. Oh, the fourth one, stress. That's a big one because, kind of like inflammation, there's good stress and there's bad stress. If you think back to a time when you had to go through something that was really, really hard emotionally and you came out stronger on the other side, sometimes we need those stresses to build strength, to build resilience. Other times, stress can break us down. So we need to really think about how we're looking at stresses in our life, and reframe these. And of course, I'm really into therapy, and there's a lot of different therapies. There's therapy, I'm talking to somebody and they're helping me figure this out. And there is exercises therapy, there is art therapy, there is music therapy, there's meditation. So find the therapy that works for you, but figuring out your triggers, if you will, the things that bring you stress or cause you stress, and trying to reframe them. An easy one is, I'm at a stoplight, I'm behind somebody, I can see that they're on their phone, the light turned green, I know this light is super short, and I have a couple of choices. One is I can lay on that horn and say, come on, you idiot, get out of the way. That's going to cause me stress. Another thing is I can lightly tap on it and be like, hey, I know you're looking at your phone. Hey, I do that too. And maybe a little bit of compassion, but I need to get through this light. And the other one is, hey, you know what? They'll look up. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not saying one is better, right? That super stress one, we don't want to cause that stress in our bodies. And the only way that I can be aware of my reaction is to be aware of my reaction, is to notice how I react to different stressors. Think about it. Get to know yourself. Mindfulness, right? Being able to choose how you want to react to a situation, because that literally can be the difference between having a nice, healthy brain and not. So we really want to learn how to manage our stress. Fifth one is what Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services is all about, which is community. Get friends. Find friends. Friends are good for your brain. And remember, everybody's different. I don't need a ton of people. I'm one of those people who has always had one really, really, really good friend who's my husband, and then I have a few other friends kind of out here. I don't need a ton of people around me, but that's because I know who I am. You might want to be around a lot of people, and that's great. That's why you come to the senior centers, and you take a class. You take an exercise class or a painting class or a language class. Maybe you just come to the senior centers to eat, to have lunch, and sit around other people and get some conversation going. But we want to minimize loneliness. The pandemic really brought this to the forefront, that people who are lonely, and when I say lonely, that doesn't mean alone. You can be alone and not be lonely, and that's okay. It's when you're alone and you're like, I really feel lonely. I want to be around people. Well, come to the senior centers, go to Parks and Rec, join a book club, Go to your church or your spiritual organization that brings you joy. When you get around other people, that helps your brain. Just being around other people, you don't even have to be exercising with them, just getting around them. And it says here, when people are lonely, their risk of dementia rises by as much as 40%. So it really is something that you need to look at. And again, admitting that you're lonely, that's a sign of strength. And then doing something about it is even more courageous, getting out there and meeting new people. And remember, senior centers, that's why we're here. Last, this one I love, is novelty. And what they mean is do something new. Try something new. And I mean, to be completely like stereotypical, as we age, and I think this is true for younger people too, but as we age, sometimes we become very set in our ways and we don't want to learn anything new, right? I have been doing baking with a checkbook for 40 years and it's always done me well. I don't need to learn how to do online checking. Well, you might need to, right? It's scary, but you're learning new things. It could also be, wow, I've always wanted to take tap dance and I never have, because learning tap dance is great for your brain because you're learning how to move your feet in different sequences to music. So it doesn't have to be going back to school. It can just be anything that's new to you. And I'm going to go over a lot of different ways for you to learn something new. And again, it can be auditing classes at the University of Utah, but it also can be taking Chinese calligraphy at one of the senior centers that we have. So what you do for your novelty is up to you, but it needs to be something new. And I think it's always good when you do something new that challenges you, that puts your brain in that good stress. Like, oh, this is hard. I have to learn. I have to practice it. I think that's great. Individuals with high levels of participation in novel activities over the life course are less likely to clinically demonstrate cognitive impairment. So that's huge. So again, learning new things. So like I said, I'm going to present 6 more presentations like this. They'll probably be about 30 minutes long. And I'm going to break each one of these down and go over it much more detailed. So I'm going to go over exercise, really delve into that, nutrition, really get into it, sleep and sleep hygiene, stress and stress management, community, talking about different ways that you can get in touch with your community, and then, of course, novelty or lifelong learning, as we call it in the biz. And different ways that you can be a part of lifelong learning. And remember, all of this is to build that cognitive reserve. This is to fill your tank as much as you can so that when the inevitable happens and you have to be sedentary, you have fuel in your tank to get you through that experience. I do have to do a quick shout out here. This presentation was provided to me by the Institute of Clinical Excellence and their subdivision Modern Management of the Older Adult. They're a physical therapy organization that I'm a part of, and they're all about serving the older adult population and making them stronger through physical therapy. So thank you to them for providing these slides. And thank you to all of you for listening to this presentation. If you have questions, please feel free to email me at pcorley, that's P Corley, at saltlakecounty.gov. Our email has changed. It is everything now is saltlakecounty.gov. So feel free to email me, or I do use the telephone still. Welcome to call me at 385-468-3083. 385-468-3083. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. I will be doing the presentation on exercise in December 2024, so next month, and I'll be doing one for each month for the next 6 months. All right. Thanks, everybody.